Remember that episode of Star Trek Voyager where Captain Janeway acted with reckless disregard for the rights and/or well-being of a member of her crew? That's not the one I'm thinking of, but yeah, good guess. No, not that one. Oh, the series finale where she unilaterally erases 25 years of history because she didn't like how it turned out. No, Tuvix. Tuvix is the episode I'm talking about. It's in the title of the video. The video you're watching right now? The video called, Did Captain Janeway Actually Murder Tuvix? Short answer? Yes. What, you're still here? Did you want the long answer? All right. Yes. I'm kidding. It's just one of my trademark hilarious gags. You didn't really think I was going to miss an opportunity to tell you everything that I think, did you? Besides, I'm sure you noticed the running time of the video. It's right down there. Anyway, it's been a while since I did a video where I just straight up ripped on Voyager, and there are reasons for that. I don't want to come across as a hater. I don't want to encourage certain segments of the fandom who dislike Voyager for ignoble reasons, cough cough misogyny, and I don't want to give the impression that I, actually hate Voyager, because I don't. I do think, creatively speaking, it's the least successful and most frustrating series in the franchise, but I don't actually hate it. Come on, I'm a 40-year-old man. How pathetic would it be if I hated a TV show whose worst sin was just not being very good most of the time? Hate is far too precious a currency to be spent so impetuously. However, having said that, I don't want people to think I've gone soft, you know? Media criticism consists of more than just complaining about stuff you don't like, but giving an honest, articulate, hopefully constructive negative review is a totally legitimate thing that every critic, no matter how positive their attitude, has to do from time to time. And I don't want y'all to think that Steve Shives is incapable of dunking on Star Trek when I think it deserves it, because, okay, I know what you're thinking. You don't have to say it. I can read it in your eyes. Oh, Steve's buddies with Jesse Gender now. He was on Positively Trek. He was on Trek Central. He loves Discovery and Picard. He loves anything with Star Trek in the title. He's just a rubber stamp. I ain't no rubber stamp. You got it? And I'm gonna prove it to you. It's time to remind some of you just who the hell I am. Time to win back my street cred. And I'm gonna do it by talking about this episode from late in Voyager's second season, called Tuvix, and there ain't a damn thing that any of you or anybody else is gonna do to stop me. You're 70,000 light years away, lost and homeless. You cannot hurt me! So Voyager is in orbit around some planet because they detected some flower that might be a good nutritional supplement. Not even 2 years in, and they're already eating flowers to survive. And everybody seems fine with it. What is the point of this show? Pace yourself, Steve. Pace yourself. Tuvok and Neelix are on the planet collecting samples. Neelix is being Neelix, saying stuff like, I know it goes against your fundamental nature to openly enjoy exploring this beautiful planet on such a lovely day, but I'm enjoying it, so I think you ought to change your fundamental nature so you can enjoy it too. Because underneath the facade of a light comic relief character I present to the world, I'm actually an obdurate narcissist who thinks the way I do things is the only way things should be done, which is why I continue to treat your lack of outward emotion as a personal challenge to overcome instead of just showing you the most basic level of respect that anyone should expect from their coworkers. Understand, Mr. Vulcan? And Tuvok's like, you know our phasers have a vaporize setting, right? Like, you'd just be gone. Anyway, they find some samples of the flowers they're looking for, these special kinds of orchids, and they collect some, and Tuvok is like, good, let's get the hell out of here. And they signal Voyager for transport, but there's a problem. 2 of them beam up, But only one person is materializing on the transporter pad. It seems like they lost one of them. And Harry's standing there with his fingers crossed, like, please be Tuvok that's dead. I want that promotion so bad. But it's neither Tuvok nor Neelix who materializes on the transporter pad. It's this guy, who looks kind of like Conan O'Brien did in If They Made It of Tuvok and Neelix, but wasn't trying to be funny. There's a crackin' pop culture reference for you, huh? What's it been, like 10 years since Conan did that bit? That's why people love me, because I've got my finger on the pulse. I know how to reach out to the kids. I wonder if I can work a Karnak joke into this thing. Where was I? Okay, so somehow the transporter merges Tuvok and Neelix into a single person. Even the clothes he's wearing when he first appears are a combination of Tuvok's uniform and Neelix's outfit, which, well done, transporter. Nice sense of design. Tuvix, as he eventually decides he wants to be called, goes to sickbay, and the doctor confirms that the genetic patterns of Tuvok and Neelix have been combined, along with those of the orchids they were bringing back. Harry's like, maybe it was something about those orchids that caused this to happen. And Janeway tells him, well, go find out. You're a flower detective now. And Harry's like, that sounds like a lot of extra work and responsibility. Can I maybe rank up to Lieutenant JG? No! Harry's a good flower detective, though, and he figures out that it was something weird about those orchids that combined with the DNA of Tuvok and Neelix while everything was dematerialized during transport to kinda mush everything together into Tuvix. Neat, huh? The doctor determines that Tuvix is in perfect health and his condition is stable, and there's no way he can think of at the moment to separate him back into Tuvok and Neelix so he can return to duty. Or go on duty, whatever. Meanwhile, because he's got all of Neelix's feelings and memories, Tuvix has the hots for Kes. But Kes isn't really cool with it. It's kind of weird because, yeah, she and Neelix are a thing at this point, but she and Tuvok are friends. And Tuvix is neither Tuvok nor Neelix, but he's also both of them. And that's a lot to think about. And that's before she even gets to the question of what his dick looks like. What? Like she's not curious? Like you're not curious? Kes is like, what about Tuvok's wife? And Tuvix is like, yeah, she's great, but she's also 70,000 light years away. You know what I'm saying? Your lifespan is only 9 years. It's probably going to take us a lot longer than that to get home, if we ever do, which means you and me can burn the bed down nightly for the rest of your life, and T'Pel never even needs to know. And it'll be great. I promise. You should see my dick. It's a little weird, but in ways I think might actually help. Kes is like, get out. But eventually, Kes and Tuvix start to grow closer. It takes a while, but they become friends, and Kes even says she'd like to see their friendship grow. He takes over Tuvok's duties as Chief Tactical Officer, and he runs the kitchen like Neelix did, and he's apparently a better cook than Neelix was. The crew accepts him. Captain Janeway comes to think of him as a trusted advisor. He starts to make a life for himself aboard Voyager, a life of his own. And then the doctor says, oh, hey, I figured out how to split Tuvix up into Tuvok and Neelix again. Isn't that great? And Tuvix is like, doesn't work for me, brother. Because the thing is, in order for Tuvok and Neelix to come back, Tuvix has to die. And Tuvix, being Tuvix, doesn't want to die. This puts Janeway in a tough spot because she wants to bring Tuvok and Neelix back, but she also wants to pay lip service to Tuvix's right to exist. So she calls Tuvix in for a talk and she says, look, I know you don't want to die and stuff, but have you considered how much more comfortable it would make everyone else on the ship if you were gone and Tuvok and Neelix were back? And Tuvix is like, well, it's my decision though, right? And Janeway says, I mean, I am the captain, so... Hold up. Just so we're clear here, you're saying that you have the right to order me to undergo a procedure that will kill me, basically an execution, even though I haven't done anything wrong, because you're the captain? Yup. And then Janeway orders Tuvix to report to sickbay for the procedure, and he refuses and begs his crewmates and friends to help him. Nobody does. They just stand there watching in complicit silence and tries to flee, but security stops him. And then Tuvix looks around and says to everyone, "You're all going to have to live with this." And everyone looks at him like, "What show do you think you're on? By next week it'll be like this never happened, but go off." Tuvix goes on, "I'm sorry, because you're all good people, my colleagues, my friends." And then he says, "I forgive you, treating these cowardly shits with far more grace than they deserve." Then again, grace in this sense is always undeserved, isn't it? That's what makes it grace. You know what? Never mind. Forget I said that. Janeway brings Tuvix to sickbay and says, "Okay, kill him to bring my friends back." And the doctor steps forward and says, "Yeah, about that. I reviewed my medical ethics textbook, and it turns out, as a doctor, I'm not supposed to just kill people, especially if they don't want me to. So I am taking a courageous moral stand and refusing to perform this procedure." Janeway says, "Okay. Did you program the procedure you're refusing to do into the computer?" And the doctor's like, "Yep, right this way, help yourself." Janeway says to Harry, "Is that the hypo spray with the murder juice?" And Harry's like, "Yeah, if I give you the hypo spray of murder juice, is that maybe worth a rank bump?" She's like, "Give me the murder juice." And she shoots Tuvix up with the murder juice and goes to the control panel and energizes the medical transporter. And Tuvix disappears. And Tuvok and Neelix come back. She's like, "Tuvok, Neelix, good to see you again." And then she turns and walks out. We pull her down the corridor for a bit, and she's got this expression like, "Ever have one of those days?" The end. So, she totally murders Tuvix. I'm not even going to try to tease that out. She murders him. She thinks she has a good reason, but that doesn't matter. I think I've got good reasons to murder a few people too, but if I did it, I'd still be a murderer. So it might be worth it. The question, did Captain Janeway actually murder Tuvix, may have a simple, straightforward answer, from where I sit anyway, but that's not the end of the discussion. Because no matter where you come down on this question, it raises several related issues that deserve to be examined. Let's start by looking at things from Captain Janeway's point of view. When she talks to Tuvix about the separation procedure, she presents herself as not just acting on her own behalf, but on behalf of Tuvok and Neelix. "As captain, I must be their voice," she says, "and I believe they would want to live." And look, emotionally speaking, that's a very sympathetic position. Janeway has an opportunity to bring her friends back, and she thinks they would want to come back. Whether they would want to come back if they knew the price of their return would be the life of another person is a question that is never directly addressed, but then again, the person in question is Tuvix, who is made of Tuvok and Neelix, so their feelings on the matter might be kind of complicated. Even if we take speculation about what Tuvok and Neelix would want off the table, it's still a sympathetic position that Janeway finds herself in within an emotional context. She misses Tuvok and Neelix. She wants them back. And it's not just Janeway. One of the episode's best scenes is when Kes goes to Janeway after Tuvix has come to her asking her to plead his case to the captain. And Kes breaks down and says, "Tuvix doesn't deserve to die, but I want Neelix back. I get it. There are people in my life who I love more than I can even express, than I can even fully fathom myself. If one of them died, and then I had an opportunity to bring them back, but bringing them back would cost another person their life, I'm sorry, but I would take that deal. And the truth is, I wouldn't even have to think about it all that much. Is that right? No. Is that morally justifiable? No, I don't think it is. Would doing that make me a bad person? I don't know. Probably. I don't care. I do it. So I get where Kes is coming from, and I get where Janeway is coming from, and more abstractly, I get the desire to put things back the way they were. On a series that is constantly hitting the reset button from week to week, Tuvix is a really interesting episode because it gives the characters the opportunity to hit the reset button themselves, to choose to undo the events of the episode. In fact, let me just get this out of the way before I go any further. This is a really, really good episode. It's been a few years since I watched it, and normally when I think about it or talk about it, I'm focused on the moral questions it raises and the rightness or wrongness of the actions of the characters. So when I watched it to prepare for this video, I was really impressed by how well it works as an hour of dramatic television. The central dilemma, should Tuvix die so that Tuvok and Neelix can live, is very compelling, even though the result is a foregone conclusion. There's an excellent scene between Janeway and Kes where we actually get some sense of the emotional impact being lost in the Delta Quadrant is having on the crew. Janeway mentions her boyfriend Mark, who is back on Earth, how easy it is to imagine being back with him, and how painful it is coming to terms with the fact that he's no longer a part of her life. And hell, even the technobabble explanation of how Tuvix was created is clever. The magic space orchids reproduce by merging with other organisms to create hybrids, and being dematerialized in the transporter beam caused the orchids to combine with Tuvok and Neelix, creating a new single being. It's an impressive example of the quasi-scientific, superficially plausible horseshit that has been a hallmark of Star Trek plots since the beginning. It's such a good episode, in fact, that I wish it was part of a better series. But I'll come back to that. First, let's talk about why, despite how sympathetic her position is, and how understandable her decision is on a purely emotional level, Janeway is totally a murderer for doing Tuvix like that. During their conversation in the ready room, where Janeway's like, thinking about killing you, Tuvix compares what Janeway is planning to an execution. And he has a point. What Janeway does is an execution of an innocent person. Janeway frames it as bringing back Tuvok and Neelix, but the episode makes it very clear that while Tuvix is the result of the combining of Tuvok and Neelix, he is a new, unique individual. Tuvix himself uses the metaphor of a cake. You can't extract the flour, eggs, and water from the cake after it's baked because they no longer exist in their previous forms. They aren't flour, eggs, and water anymore. They're a cake. And even if you could extract them, you'd have to destroy the cake in order to do it. And what kind of a monster would destroy a cake to get some flour, eggs, and water? No monster who would ever be a friend of mine. I'll tell you that much. Gamera, did you separate a cake back into its basic ingredients to get those eggs, flour, and water? I can't stay mad at you. It doesn't matter that Janeway is executing Tuvix so she can bring back Tuvok and Neelix. She's still executing him, and he's still innocent. It's not Tuvix's fault that Tuvok and Neelix are gone. It was an accident. He had no control over it. He's not responsible for it. It's not right to fix it at his expense, his ultimate expense. Think about it this way. What if instead of being combined to create Tuvix, Tuvok and Neelix were still alive, just being unjustly held prisoner somewhere? And suppose Tuvix was an innocent third party, and the captors of Tuvok and Neelix told Janeway they would release Tuvok and Neelix in exchange for Tuvix. It's a bit of a trolley problem, should you sacrifice the freedom of one person to gain the freedom of two, though I tend to agree with Captain Picard, who once said, "I refuse to allow such questions to be decided by arithmetic." Yes, it's a violation of the rights of Tuvok and Neelix for them to be held captive, but that's already happened. Why should Tuvix, an innocent party who is not being held captive, be forced to give up his freedom so that they can gain theirs? Even if Tuvix was willing, it would still be wrong, because I think most of us would agree that, however well-intentioned, it's not okay for someone to be made to receive someone else's punishment, to pay for someone else's crime. That's not justice. Incidentally, that's why the substitutionary sacrifice of Jesus at the center of the Christian doctrine of salvation is fundamentally immoral, but hey, that's a subject for another time. Like several years ago when I made a whole bunch of videos about it. But it's even worse because Tuvix is adamantly unwilling, yet Janeway forces him to do it anyway. That's wrong. If we believe that individual liberty means anything, if we believe the rights to exist and to live free of unjust coercion or cruel and unusual punishment are worth protecting at all, we cannot call what happens to Tuvix, in my prison hypothetical or in the actual episode, acceptable. It is wrong to punish an innocent person, and that wrong is even more egregious if the punishment costs that innocent person their life. It doesn't matter what you stand to gain from punishing them, it's wrong. And it's obviously wrong, especially within the context of Star Trek, where the importance of protecting people's basic rights comes up again and again, episode after episode, in every iteration of the franchise. It's one of the bedrock principles that we have repeatedly seen Starfleet officers pledge their lives to defend, which makes that scene where Tuvix is led off the bridge even tougher to watch, because it's not just that Tuvix is breaking down and pleading for his life, it's that no one else there, none of those Starfleet officers, or provisional Starfleet officers in the case of the former Maquis members, but, close enough, speaks up or tries to stop it. The only dissent comes from the Doctor, though I think even he deserves only partial credit, because while he refuses to perform the procedure himself, he also steps aside and allows Janeway to do it without objection. Tuvix is still dead, but as long as your conscience is clear, right, Doc? How did everyone else on the ship miss this? How is it that no one, not one single person, seriously tries to stop Janeway from killing Tuvix? How can they all demonstrate such flagrant and cold-hearted hypocrisy? I think there is a reason that goes beyond mere bad writing or universal murderous assholery on the part of Voyager's crew. To understand that reason, we have to take a quick side trip through Star Trek history. Tuvix stands in line with many other guest characters from the various Trek series, characters who are duplicates or twins or other kinds of alternate versions of regular characters. Think about the classic Trek episode The Enemy Within, which uses the same gimmick as Tuvix, only in reverse. Rather than having two characters combined into one character, Captain Kirk, is split into two. While both halves have an equal claim to being the real Captain Kirk, because the good Kirk is the first to materialize in the transporter, and because he assumes the role of the episode's protagonist, we tend to think of him as the genuine Kirk, and of the other one as his evil twin. And it's the evil twin who eventually breaks down and collapses into the good Kirk's arms. The duplicate, or the character we're led to perceive as the duplicate, is the weak one who must be defeated or destroyed so the legitimate Kirk can live. A few episodes later, Kirk gets duplicated again, this time in the form of an android. And, well, Android Kirk ain't around too long either. In TNG, there's that episode where Picard meets himself from 6 hours in the future, ultimately realizing that he has to kill his future self to break a time loop and save the Enterprise. Of course, in Star Trek Nemesis, there's also Shinzon, Picard's clone, who turns out to be evil and then dies when he runs into a spike, and then keeps going. Ugh. Nemesis also introduces us to a never-before-seen twin for Data, B4, who seems benign enough, but as we later discover in Star Trek Picard, ends up disassembled in a drawer somewhere. Moving backwards through TNG, we can't forget Star Trek's #1 evil twin, Data's other brother, Lore, who, after his final defeat, we are told, is also to be deactivated and presumably disassembled. Let's not forget my favorite example of duplicates in TNG, the clones of Riker and Pulaski from the episode Up the Long Ladder, which Riker discovers in their incubation chambers and immediately vaporizes. Better not tell that story to Tom, Will. Oh yeah, speaking of Tom Riker, it turns out he and Will Riker are the products of a transporter accident that split the original Will Riker into two people 8 years prior to the events of the episode Second Chances, which means they are both the real Will Riker, and yet it's the newly discovered Riker who has to change his name to Tom, who doesn't get the promotion that Will got immediately after escaping the planet on which Tom was trapped, and who eventually shows up on DS9 as a member of the Maquis and gets thrown into a Cardassian prison, never to be seen or heard from again. Except in action figure comics, created by me. There are examples from other shows in the franchise. This duplicate of Ensign Mayweather on Enterprise, who was apparently only created so he could be electrocuted to trick his crewmates into thinking the real Mayweather was dead. This doppelganger of O'Brien, who ends up dead by the end of the episode, though considering what the real O'Brien goes through during the rest of the series, maybe the doppelganger is the lucky one. And, of course, the silver blood duplicates of the entire crew of Voyager from the episode Course Oblivion, who discover the true nature of their existence just in time to disintegrate and be totally forgotten. It's not good to be a duplicate version of a regular character in a Star Trek show, is what I'm saying. It's an odd trope when I think about it. Very un-Star Trek-like. The introduction and elimination of so many duplicate versions of regular characters sends the message that there are legitimate versions of those characters and illegitimate versions, and the legitimate versions are better off when the illegitimate versions are gotten rid of. But other than the good and evil versions of Captain Kirk, the version of Picard from further ahead in the time loop, and the Silver Blood Voyager crew, all of whom were established as only being able to survive a short time, the duplicates I've mentioned could have gone on to live their own normal lives as individuals in their own right. They were introduced for their one episode, then killed off or shipped off screen in the case of Tom Riker because the writers thought it was neater that way. And for the sake of storytelling expediency, I get it, but it kind of cuts against that fundamental principle of Star Trek I talked about earlier, the respect for the rights of the individual. What about the rights of the clones? The duplicates? The doppelgangers? Aren't they people too? If Data has the right to be treated like anybody else with his personhood recognized and his liberty protected under the law, what the hell gives Starfleet or the Federation or anyone else the right to deactivate Lore? No matter what crime he committed, he should have the same rights as anyone else, and the Federation doesn't have a death penalty. So, what the hell? There's also the recurring theme that having a duplicate or a twin diminishes you somehow. Riker comes right out and says this in Up the Long Ladder when he refuses to donate his genetic material for cloning. One William Riker is unique, perhaps even special, he says. But 100 of him, 1,000 of him, diminishes me in ways I can't even imagine. Does it though? I don't really see how. There wouldn't be 1,000 Rikers, there'd be 1,000 people who look like Riker, who have Riker's genetic material, but who are each separate, unique individuals. Even Tom and Will Riker, who were literally the same person for most of their lives and are identical right down to the last letter of their DNA, are different people by the time we're introduced to Tom in Second Chances. Why? Because our identities aren't determined just by our genetics or by what we look like. Our experiences shape who we are. So, I must disagree with the writers responsible for making this such a common Trek trope, and I must disagree with Commander Riker. You're wrong, Will. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Tuvix was living on borrowed time from the moment he was created, is what I'm saying. But that doesn't change the fact that, ethically speaking, he was an individual with rights, and what Captain Janeway did was unjustifiable. But, having said all that, the fact that Captain Janeway murders Tuvix is not the most frustrating thing about the episode. The most frustrating thing about the episode is that Captain Janeway murders Tuvix, and by the following week, it's as though it never happened. Like I said, this is a really good episode, and the events of this episode should have a significant impact on the lives of the characters on this show. Tuvok and Neelix essentially die, combined to form this new individual, Tuvix, who becomes a member of the crew and starts to build a life for himself. Then Tuvix is killed, pleading for his life in order to bring Tuvok and Neelix back. And it's the captain of the ship who ultimately does the killing. And at the end of the episode, Captain Janeway doesn't look all that thrilled about what she just did. How do Tuvok and Neelix feel in the aftermath of this? Do they carry any guilt over the fact that in order for them to live, Tuvix had to die? Since Tuvix carried the memories and feelings of both Tuvok and Neelix, do each of them now carry the memories and feelings of Tuvix? What about the other members of the crew? Do they feel shame at allowing Tuvix to be dragged away to his death? Does Kes look at Neelix and Tuvok differently now? Does she feel bad for choosing them over Tuvix? Does she feel justified? What about Captain Janeway? Is she haunted by what she did, by what she felt she had to do? These are all fascinating questions that could lead to story and character growth that would greatly enrich another series. Because Voyager is not that show, and that's what's so frustrating. I don't think Voyager is a bad show because it introduces Tuvix only to kill him. I don't think Voyager is a bad show because Captain Janeway kills him, or because the rest of the crew stands by and watches her kill him, failing to live by their professed principles. I think Voyager is a bad show because it has those characters make those choices, those difficult, interesting choices, in a series where ultimately they don't matter. Strictly contained episodic television is a totally valid format. If the producers of Voyager wanted their show to remain mostly static from week to week, with little to no carryover from one episode to the next, that's fine. There's no reason why such a show can't be entertaining and satisfying and maybe even thought-provoking. But if that's the show you want to make, maybe don't tell stories that ought to have lasting impacts on the lives of your characters when you know you're never going to explore those impacts. It's like setting off a bomb at the end of one episode and then having everything cleaned up and back to normal by the start of the next episode. Why set the goddamn bomb off in the first place? So, yeah, Captain Janeway murdered Tuvix. Tuvix deserved better than what he got. But the thing is, so did every other character on the show. Aren't you glad you stuck around for the long answer? That wasn't a rhetorical question. Hey folks, hope you enjoyed this one. No hard feelings, Voyager fans, I hope. Nothing personal. I love you. I love Voyager, even though all it ever does is disappoint me. I'm going to clue you in as to what the next Regulation Trek Actually topic is going to be in a minute, but first, let me give shout-outs to some of my newest Patreon patrons. Their names are Steph C., thank you Steph, Caroline Clark, thank you Caroline, Ryan Van Schack, thank you Ryan, Philip Sink, thank you Philip, Dan Allen, thank you Dan, Chris Woodall, thank you Chris, Tas D. Amor, thank you Tas, The Crystal Show, thank you The Crystal Show, Gene Mithun, thank you Gene, Randy Thompson, thank you Randy, Lakar Fett, thank you Lakar, Seth Jones, thank you Seth, Matt Weir, thank you Matt, Brian A., thank you Brian, Lisbeth Dylis, thank you Lisbeth, Sasha Weiss, thank you Sasha, Jared Trich, thank you Jared, Disco Shootout, thank you Disco Shootout, Chris Peace, thank you Chris, Angus Bjarnason, thank you Angus, and Sean Ferguson, thank you Sean. Those are the names of the patrons who have begun pledging $5 a month or more since the last Regulation Trek Actually video. If you enjoy these videos of mine and you want to help me to keep making them, you can become a patron by going to patreon.com/Steve Shives. Pledges of any amount from $1 a month on up are greatly appreciated and really help me out. And all my patrons get to vote in polls to determine future Trek Actually topics and submit questions ahead of time for my Ask Away live streams. But if you pledge $5 a month or more, you get yourself a shout out. Also, just want to remind you that Patreon now gives you the option to pledge annually as well as monthly. So you can pledge $5 a month, let's say, but just pay for a whole year of that all at once instead of being charged month by month. And if you do that, you get a little bit of a discount and you still get a shout out if it's at least $5 a month. So, something to think about. Thanks so much to all of my patrons for your support. I could not do this without you. I also want to remind you that if you dig my Star Trek related content here on YouTube, you might want to check out the Star Trek themed comedy podcast I co-host with the brilliant Jason Harding. That podcast is called The Ensign's Log. Jason and I play characters who are low-ranking officers serving aboard a certain famous Federation starship as it carries out its historic 5-year mission. It has been our outlet to make fun of Star Trek, to write a love letter to Star Trek, to flex our Trek nerd muscles, and to create characters and tell stories that make us laugh and that we care about, and hopefully it does the same thing for you too. Links are in the description. Please listen to The Ensign's Log. Now, the time has come to reveal the topic of next month's Regulation Trek Actually video. Like this month, this is a topic that has generated controversy in the Trek fan community for many years. It's a topic that will give me yet another opportunity to talk about my favorite series in the Star Trek franchise, and will also give me my first opportunity to talk about an entirely different franchise that a lot of you ask me for my thoughts on all the time. The topic of the next Regulation Trek Actually video will be, is Star Trek Deep Space Nine actually a ripoff of Babylon 5? I bet some of you have opinions. So do I. You'll find out what mine are next month. Until then, watch for more Trek-themed videos and videos about other stuff, because I do have things to say outside of Star Trek, you know. And take care of yourselves, everybody. See ya.